Back in studio, Joe Musso alongside Ryan Wilson here to break it down. Ryan, we'll get to Gibbs in a moment because no doubt the player of this game. But coming off of that 36-6 loss for the Lions, we're looking for that hang your hat on a win type win here. Was this that in your eyes? It wasn't the cleanest football game from Detroit, and maybe they looked a little bit better than they actually were because of their opponent.
And maybe that's where you start if you're Dan Campbell. We didn't play our best football, but we still found a way to win, and win pretty convincingly despite making 3 turnovers just to the one that the Raiders had. But time and time again, throughout this game from start to finish, it was clear that the Lions were the better football team. And while it may have been close around halftime, at the end of the day, at no point did you feel like the Raiders were going to be able to threaten down the stretch. Even when they got the ball back late, down by 12, it remained the case because the offense simply could not make things work for the Raiders on that side of the ball. And that speaks not only to the inefficiencies there, but to how well this defense has played under Aaron Glenn, the defense coordinator, and how many strides, how far they've come in terms of what they were doing last year when they were one of the worst defenses in the NFL, went out, drafted some players, went out and signed some players, built around Aiden Hutchinson. Alex Anzalone, by the way, turns out he's the next coming of Mike Singletary, and I think we've seen that play itself out over the first 2 months of the season. And again, this team has found ways to win. They're bouncing back from that whooping they took last weekend in Baltimore, and this is a great place to start as you look towards the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke on it there, the pass rush getting home and making life increasingly difficult on Jimmy Garoppolo and the offensive line of the Raiders. We'll get there in a moment, but again, Gibbs, spectacular, $189. Sometimes you're sitting there saying, running backs, first round, early. I mean, you assess the talent then. We see the talent now. Sort of phased Gibbs into this offense and now really expanding that role. What does that split look like when it is a two-headed monster? I mean, good problem to have here for Detroit, but Gibbs showed not just that he is a multifaceted back, but also a between the tackles. $152 on the ground today. I think most surprising here when we talk about Gibbs.
Love this graphic. Some big names here. Billy Sims, Barry Sanders, of course, Kevin Jones, former first-round pick out of Virginia Tech. And then Jahmyr Gibbs there, and you talked about it, Joe. 12th overall pick in the draft back in April. We saw Bijan go 8th overall, 2 running backs in the first 12 picks. And at the time, the questions were, why are you taking a running back that high? Well, fast forward to October 30th. This is why you take a running back that high, because he's not just a running back. And you sort of hinted at it before the show. An air back is what he is, which means he can kill you on the ground, and we saw that play itself out. But if you need to get the ball to him in the air, he can be not only a dump-off option, a check-down option, he can be a receiver who can run routes out of the slot. He can run routes out wide if you need him to do that. And that versatility, that explosiveness is what makes him so incredibly important. And when David Montgomery comes back, then you have that two-headed monster where you don't have to give. And look, I think Kyle Shanahan would probably admit this. He would like to get Christian McCaffrey fewer touches. You don't wear out a Jahmyr Gibbs, who is not built for 30 carries a game. You share the load with David Montgomery, and then this offense, which when they get healthy in the offensive line, and they had some struggles there today, it's going to be cooking with gas.
I think it's a nickname backfield. It's a backfield that's going to need nickname. We'll work on it. We'll workshop some things, but talent in that backfield, and just another guy for defenses having to account for. You add that to Sam Laporta. You add that to Amon-Ra St. Brown on the outside. Again, not the cleanest performance from the Lions, but so many weapons kept them afloat here against a Raiders team that is nothing but questions right now. So let's ask a couple of them. Jimmy Garoppolo, not great in this game. I mean, first half was 3 of 8 for 31 yards. He does end up with about $150 through the air, I believe. 126 through the air. So any way you want to slice it, this offensively was an anemic performance. Yes, we said target Davante Adams, get that man the ball. They did try to in certain moments. Where do you start? I mean, it's got to be up front. It's got to be this offensive line. If they're trying to get right and not be sellers in the next few hours, where do you start if you are Las Vegas? Well,
first things first, Josh McDaniels needs to build a time machine, because that's going to be their only hope. And I turned to you and said this to you during the course of this game in the second half when the whooping was in full effect. I said, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't look like he wants to be out there, and you pointed out he's making a cool $25 million a year, but I don't know if that's sustainable. And whether it's with Jimmy Garoppolo or someone else, the point remains, this offense is anemic. You hired Josh McDaniels to fix it. You see Davante Adams here clearly showing his frustration. It makes me wonder what he did in a previous life to go from Aaron Rodgers to get traded to play with his teammate in Derek Carr, who got shipped to New Orleans, and now you're stuck with Jimmy Garoppolo, who can't stay healthy. And by the way, I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo was good or bad tonight, because he was running for his life because the offensive line struggled so much with the defense that we just got finished talking about. There's no quick fix. I don't know where ownership is in terms of what you do with Josh McDaniels, but this team is chock full of holes, and if they're sellers in the next 24 hours or 20 hours as we sit here, it would make a ton of sense because they're not going to be competitive in this division.
Well, let's talk about that because some reports have surfaced that they're not sellers, but you come off a loss, a relatively embarrassing one at that. You do have some talent on the roster, but nothing's gelling right now. Obviously, Davante Adams is the piece to take calls on. But the path of least resistance forward here for Vegas has to be, and it might sound odd, but building around some of the talent on the defensive side of the ball. Max Crosby might be the best defender in the game, and I know we assign that to a different player each week, but you can't waste that window.
Right.
Is selling the quickest way to go about building?
In this case, it feels like it is. It's with the understanding that you're giving up on the season. But let's be real. Just because you don't say it out loud doesn't mean the season is over or it's not clear that it's over for the Raiders because they are going nowhere and they're going there fast. So I think you do have an opportunity to move on. I don't know what's going to happen with Davante Adams. The contract situation obviously comes into it. But there are teams that need wide receivers. And there are teams that would love to have Davante Adams on their roster. I would imagine Davante Adams, based on his actions that we saw on the sidelines today with the frustration, 7 targets, only 1 catch. What we've seen in recent weeks, his frustration, he said it out loud that he needs to be getting the ball more, and that doesn't require a smart football mind to figure that out. I would imagine there'll be phone calls made. Now, whether anything happens is another story because we've wondered for quite some time during the Josh McDaniel era, when's this going to get better? It hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse.
It's a big contract for someone to assume. We always have room for Davante Adams on this show. Let's take a listen what he had to say just moments ago post-game.
Honestly, I don't know what to say at this moment. I truly don't. I wish I had the words to say something that's not going to get blown up in the media and taken out of context. So I'm going to just, I just don't know.
What are you feeling right now? Can you elaborate on anything going through your mind?
Frustration, but I mean, that kind of goes without saying.
Davante, I know you said that you have confidence whenever you're out there in offense's ability, but is it kind of hard to maintain that when the results are what they've been?
No, it's not hard to maintain the confidence in our offense. It's just hard to curb your frustration when you can't put it together when you know you should.
All right, so there's Davante Adams in his own words, voicing some of the frustrations, but not. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming hours regarding him and this Las Vegas Raiders team. Let's get back to the Detroit side here because we're trying to figure out who's who still in the NFC. It's a playoff picture that is convoluted right now, and the great teams look human at times. The human teams look great. There are cellar dwellers as well that have jumped up and clipped a couple of these teams. As you sort of assess who the Lions are at 6-2, the only 6-win team in the NFC behind only the Eagles with their 7 wins, what is the coaching point coming out of this one? Yes, can't have that ball from Jared Goff. We'll coach that one up on film. Yes, we love what we see in the running game, but if you want to be the echelon of a team that can look the Eagles in the eyes and say, we're here too, what is the coaching point through 8 weeks?
Now, Dan Campbell isn't going to mention against the spread number, but they're now 15-3 against the spread, playing probably one of their worst games of the season, aside from the Raiders game that they lost. Excuse me, the Ravens game they lost last week. So I think the takeaway is you look at those list of teams. The Eagles are better in the win column, but each one of those teams you can find flaws. The Eagles have had their issues in terms of the offense finally clicking. We've seen Seattle. We've talked about Geno Smith and his turnover habit. The Falcons are somehow number 4 because they're the best in that terrible division. But then you look at the 49ers. The arrow's pointing down with them right now with Brock Purdy as he tries to figure things out. Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams hurt. And, of course, the Dallas Cowboys are giving us that annual roller coaster ride that you don't know who they are from one week to the next. So I think if you're Dan Campbell, you are feeling pretty good about where you are, winning in an ugly fashion, but still winning by a huge number, demoralizing your opponent to the point where Davante Adams has to give his weekly press conference about why things are not working out. I think this is a fantastic position to be in. Their bye is going to come up. They're going to come off that bye. They're going to face the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think it's going to be all systems go. This doesn't feel like a team that sits on their laurels. I know last week perhaps they were reading the press clippings or whatever you want to call it, but the Ravens, they're no slouches as well. I think this team is moving in the right direction at the right time, and you have to feel pretty excited if you're a Lions fan because it has been a drought in terms of winning in that city.
You love a team with leadership, you love a team with weapons, and you love a team that learns something about itself each and every week. I think we learned on this week, Jahmyr Gibbs can be a problem as well. Ryan Wilson, thank you. And don't forget, each and every Sunday, there's only one place to be. Myself, Ryan Wilson, doing the yeoman's work, Sundays at 4 Eastern. We love being with you. We love having you with us. The second your game goes final, You come join us on CBS Sports HQ. Full highlights, sound, and analysis each and every Sunday on CBS Sports HQ.